Journalism is a calling, and having practiced this profession for so long, 4 decades plus, I'm inclined to believe that you can only make it when you have the passion, when you have the calling. As a science student in one of the best secondary schools in Africa, Agri Memorial Zion Secondary School, my heart was with medicine. So I was gearing towards fulfilling my ambition to become a medical doctor. But along the line, my heart turned from medicine to journalism. And since then, I have not regretted a bit for abandoning medicine and embracing journalism. And it's best repeating that having gone through the mill and risen to the pinnacle of this profession, journalism remains a calling. But there's been a sea change in journalism from the time we started up to the present era of modernity and social media virality. When we started journalism, we didn't have the luxury of even a cell phone. I remember when I was selected to cover the visits of Muammar Gaddafi to Ghana. It was my biggest assignment at that time. We received him at the airport with Jerry John Rawlings. And since we didn't have a cell phone, mobile phone to do live reporting, I had to rush from the airport to GBC to do a story. And from there, we went to the mosque at Abu Sultan, did a story. On my way, I could have easily telephoned the story or done live interview. There was no gadget, no equipment to cater for that. So I had to write the story in the vehicle, drop the story at GBC reception, and from there went to University of Ghana, where he delivered a lecture. Again, right at the location, how to do my story, and from there we came to GBC and dropped the story, and we went to the State House for a state dinner. So when we got to the state dinner, fortunately we had a telephone landline, so I telephoned the story from State House to GBC, and the dinner story I had to come back to the studio. Eventually slept in GBC studios. Did a story for 6 o'clock bulletin, and then came home. When then residing at Dakuma, had some shower, and then continued. You can see how tedious it was for a journalist to file a single story, all because we were shackled by modern equipment. But this is what we are seeing now. And what we are witnessing now is a sea change from what we inherited. Thank God now, with the aid of a telephone, we can do a live report on television, on radio, and with the aid of a telephone, you can do a recording, and transcribe, and do whatever you want. So a lot has changed, which has added value and ease to the profession. So the present crop of journalists have no excuse whatsoever to dabble or to wallow in mediocrity or not meet the expectation of the listening public or our audience. Digitalization, like AI, has come to stay. To go against AI is tantamount to swimming against the tide. And we, as journalists, we like our comfort. We like our ease, things which make our job so flexible, so easy. You know how frustrated we become when sources of news are reluctant to give out simple information, basic information. You know how frustrated we become when we cannot transmit our stories. You go to a location and virtually with nothing at all with which you can transmit your story to headquarters for stories to be airborne or stories to be put in the print media. So the present age of modernity has come not only to make our job easy, but also has come to add value. So it's a clarion call. Let's embrace it. We have no choice. This is the era in which we find ourselves. And AI and other tools have come to complement what we inherited, to make it easy. So dance according to the tune. But having said this, we also need to point out, in fact, this point can hardly be articulated, that AI can never take the place of originality. Please be original. Learn the rudiments of this profession. Learn the principles which underpin this profession. Learn, the foundational principles, things which make journalism what it is. It is said that journalism is the best profession in the world. And I'm not saying it. In fact, Gabriel Marquez, the 1982 Nobel Prize winner for literature, even though his career is literature, but he said journalism is the best profession in the world. And having tasted journalism for so long, I can't help but reinforce this point that journalism is the best profession in the world. Journalism is worth 40 other professions. So you can just imagine. So the best profession is not medicine. Even the doctors, cater for us in a period of ailment. The best profession is not law. Even though they call themselves learned men and women. The best profession is not even priesthood. Even though with all their anointing, they are closer to God. And they give us the spiritual nourishment we need to move on. But the best profession is journalism. And again, it is said that the information and the structures which disseminate information are the most powerful weapons on earth. Journalism is the most powerful entity on earth. Malcolm S. said journalism is the most powerful entity on earth. So you can imagine the power we wield and the influence we peddle. Look at our setting, our democratic setting. Many are those who cannot speak truth to power. Many are those who cannot criticize officialdom. But by virtue of what we do, by virtue of our profession as journalists, we exercise oversight responsibility over the three arms of government. Even though we are the third branch, theoretically, we're the third branch of the tripartite government. We are the fourth estate of the realm. But again, the former American president, to him, journalism is the first estate of the realm. It's the same, the first estate of the realm. So the best profession in the world and the most powerful entity on earth are nothing but journalism. So if you are a journalist, please feel proud. But sometimes, certain circumstances, certain realities make us feel bad. If you look at remuneration, what goes into, we are not adequately compensated for what we do. Look at the hell we go through. Look at the struggle. Look at sometimes the punitive environment, the insults, the verbal stones we attract by virtue of doing our work. But once you are called, once you know what you are about, that inner satisfaction that godly responsibility, fulfilling that godly responsibility, will adequately compensate you for whatever you do. So, please, journalism, all journalists in this country, you should feel so proud that of all the professions in the world, you've been called to pursue the number one, which is journalism. The Ghanaian context is not different from what happens in almost every democracy. Thank God we've come a long way from yesteryears when we were shackled by all kinds of laws, when we were hobbled by all kinds of circumstances. But since we went to a referendum to vote to abandon the bullet course and embrace the ballot box as means of electing our leaders, Ghana has come a long way in its democratic journey, and this is a plus. We've held 9 elections on the trot. Our democracy is a reference point. Our democracy is a standard measure for other democracies in the world. In fact, we are even touted as democratic accomplishments in Africa. I mean, we know that in certain areas we are experiencing a downward spiral as far as democracy is concerned. And it is said that democracy is impossible without the media. In fact, it is not only ingrained in theory, it's also rooted in practice, that democracy is impossible without the media. Our job is to seek the truth and tell the truth. But we know that the truth hurts. So sometimes by speaking the truth, you stamp on toes. By speaking the truth, by unraveling, by exposing what somebody wants to hide, by holding power, people in positions of power and authority, by holding their legs to the fire of accountability, by ventilating the concerns, articulating the views of the voiceless in the society, by championing the cause of the downtrodden, we come into coalition with powerful forces. But we ought to always lodge it at the back of our memory that journalism is not for the lily-livered. Journalism is not for the faint-hearted. Journalism is a profession not cut for timid or timorous souls. Journalism is a profession for people who have the heart, who have the will, who have the temerity, who have the fortitude to fight for the truth and stand by the truth. This is not an open call to journalists to always set themselves on a collision course. But there's no way, under no circumstance, should we as journalists sacrifice the principles which underpin our profession on the altar of convenience or on the altar of compromise. So, with this background, it's natural that we'll taste the biting edge of people who feel hurt or who feel exposed. But never should we compromise. Never should we chicken out when faced with such realities. There was a time I did a story and calls came. The pressure was mounted on me, pressure from all sides that I should read the story. I did not, and I paid the price in so many forms. There was a time people would peddle all kinds of lies, all kinds of accusations, all kinds of allegations against you. But when you know what you are about, when you know that you have been called to do this profession, no matter how bitter the experience, you stick to the truth. That's not to say that all journalists are angels. In fact, like all professions, we have people who are not worth their salt, people who have not been called, people who peddle lies, people who for the sake of their stomachs. But we have among the litany of professionals with all kinds of motives. And the one reason too is that because of the loose entry point of journalism, all kinds of people enter, unlike medicine, unlike law, unlike pharmacy, which requires some rigorous training before qualifying to practice such professions. Journalism is so free for all because of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Everybody has the freedom to receive and disseminate information. All kinds of people have entered this profession. And as the saying goes, by their fruits we shall know them. And by their fruit of recklessness, by their fruit of carelessness, by their fruit of mendacity, perpetration for mendacity and mediocrity, we can tell people who have not been called to practice this profession, but yet, because of the loose entry point, and because of the latitude given to everybody to practice journalism, they find themselves in this profession and polluting, degrading this profession. On the flip side, we have people who have stood against all odds, people who believe in their principles, people who think that regardless of circumstances, when given a choice between journalism and the most lucrative profession, when given a choice between journalism and the fattest paycheck, they will stick with journalism. But this decision comes with all kinds of dangers. Comes with all kinds of risks. The risks will come, as I said, journalism is not free from risk, from dangers. Journalism is it's a narrow path, and a narrow path can mean all kinds of things. The narrow path is strong with thorns, with insults, with difficulties, with all kinds of dangers and risks. But the narrow path will eventually lead you to freedom, vindicate you. As the saying goes, time is the womb of vindication. So with the confluence of time, those who stick to the narrowest path in journalism will be vindicated in the long run. So these are words of encouragement, especially the young ones who find themselves in very awkward situations. But please never give up. Stick to this profession, stick to this narrow path, and you'll be vindicated. I've been a commissioner with the National Media Commission, and so I'm familiar with the workings of the NMC. I've been a practicing journalist for decades now, and I've been at the helm of journalistic affairs. By the grace of God, I've occupied the most consequential position of the media community in Ghana. We comes with all kinds of pressures from all kinds of sources. The NMC is chronically under-resourced. Ideally, the NMC should have offices in all the regions. We have 16 regions now, but the question is how many offices in the regions does the NMC have? The answer is only Accra. Meanwhile, journalism is not practiced only in Accra. Journalism is not Accra-centric. Journalism is national and even international in scope. So how does the NMC exercise its oversight responsibility in regions where its presence is nil? NMC, as of now, squats in a rented place at Ridge, Cantonment, Ridge. NMC is understaffed, apart from being under-resourced. So it is not within the bounds of reality for the NMC's impact to be maximally felt. But in spite of all these limitations, NMC is doing what it can. Again, permit me to quote a typical Hermetas report, which reads, "Well done, but could do better." Even though NMC is doing what it is humanly possible, NMC can do more to monitor the media space, to educate journalists, even though education is one of our foundational responsibilities to educate. But many are those who find themselves in journalism who need more education than even consumers of media content, just because they entered its profession through the loose point and they are practicing journalism anyhow. So NMC, this is an opportunity, in fact, we see this opportunity to appeal to officialdom to please sharpen the focus of the NMC, do more to resource the NMC, so the NMC will be in a position to discharge its constitutional duty. I think we also need to do some engineering or re-engineering to the law. And this NMC was tested in court, and they summoned some journalists before court, and the court ruled that journalists are not obliged to appear before the NMC. You know, NMC has a settlement committee. Apart from educating, apart from exercising oversight responsibility, and apart from appointing heads of state-owned media institutions, NMC, one of NMC's key functions is to settle disputes in the media. And it's by law, NMC cannot oblige people they summon to appear before them to come, and let alone force them to abide by their rulings. So this is a lacuna we need to look at. This is a loophole in the law we need to look at. So whilst advocating the beefing up of resources for the NMC, we should also do some advocacy for the urgent necessity to tighten the law, which will empower the NMC to discharge its duties more effectively than it is doing now. GJA is a voluntary association, and unlike Ghana Medical Association, unlike Nurses Association, unlike others, ours is not all journalists are members of Ghana Journalists Association, but we have succeeded in mobilizing majority of journalists in this country to belong to the GJA. GJA has its pluses and minuses. One of the pluses is that we've been in the forefront of championing the causes of journalists. Self-praise is incongruous with my personality, and self-praise is alien to my principles as a Christian. But for the sake of this interview, I'll state that during our time we succeeded in unionizing the Ghana Journalists Association. This idea of unionization had been incubating for decades, but when we took over, we prioritized the need to unite GJA, so that GJA would be in a position to fight for good remuneration for journalists. We are now empowered by law to rally to the defense of journalists who are not paid well or who have labor issues with their employers. A landmark case was with the workers of CP3 who were sacked. The GJA had to intervene. In fact, we joined forces with TUC and we went to this matter. But what is lacking now is the bargaining power. Unlike Ghana Medical Association, which has a bargaining power, GJA needs to move from unionization to a regime which will give us the power to negotiate better remuneration for our members. So this is where I believe the present and succeeding generations of GJA leadership can take up. So there are those, many of our colleagues who do not see the need to join the GJA. Please, there's power in numbers. If you take a typical broom, it's very easy to break one, but if you bundle many brooms, it's very difficult. So when we come together, it will give us not only power and force, but it will also enhance our capability and capacity to not only champion the cause of journalists, but also fight for their rights, what is due them. So those who are on the fringes, those who have not yet seen the need to join the GJA, please make sure that your membership is secure, so that we collectively make a bigger impact than we are doing now. We have different categories of GJA membership. We have students membership. We have chapters in some institutions. I don't know whether they are effective or moribund. I cannot tell. I've been out of office for 3 years plus now. But we used to have a vibrant membership in GIJ, and then Kogi Yankas University, that African University of Communication Study. Yeah, something like that. Yeah. And there was a time we even had a conversation in University of Cape Coast, that we opened a brand there. I don't know how it's fizzled out, but it's worth pursuing it. And we also have branches in various media houses, which are begging for revitalization. And the Constitution also specifies the various categories of membership. Apart from student membership, we have from school. In fact, if you are from secondary school, as a senior secondary school, it will take you is it five years? You have to practice for 5 years before you become a member. With a diploma certificate, it should take you another 3 years, and with a first degree or master's, it will take you 2 years. But I think we can take a look, square these constitutional provisions with the logic of reality. The reality is that, as I said, the reality is that we need to make it smoother than what it used to be in yesteryears. So that students or journalists, you don't need to go through this waiting period for you to join this profession. And there's a time we attempted to review the Constitution. We set up a committee headed by a lawyer, one of our foremost lawyers, and an epitome of sacrifice, something. But he led it. We brought together a number of journalists to look at how best they can to tune our constitution to reflect in the modern era. And I don't know what has happened to that exercise now, but it's worth revisiting. So yes, constitutional reengineering is something of paramount importance, and we need to look at that. This is a very sensitive issue. We follow this issue, and first of all, we need to bear in mind that Ghana Registered Nurses Association is a human institution. GJA is a human institution. Journalism is a human profession. And as with all human institutions or professions, perfection is an impossible goal. So journalists have their imperfections, nurses have their imperfections, doctors have their imperfections. As for politicians, maybe their imperfections will swallow all other imperfections. This is not to set ourselves, do any comparison, but politicians are politicians, journalists are journalists. And I must say also that some journalists are worse than politicians, all because we are human. The report has come out, and I think what we need to sharpen our focus now are the recommendations. We need to tackle what happened at Rich Hospital from the root and not the branch. The branch approach will be to criticize who said this, who said well, who did what, who reacted in a certain manner. Basic equipment is lacking. Basic equipment has broken down. Nurse to patient ratio, professional to patient ratio is so staggering. What do you do to address these challenges? And if you look at what the report exposed, and the image, Rich Hospital is perceived as a flagship medical institution. But what happened has underlined the fact that all that shines is not gold. All that glitters is not gold. So we need to go back, take a hard look at the recommendations, and try to address or fix the problems exposed in the recommendations with urgent promptitude. This is my take on the issue. If going by the reports, anything which the reports, I'm not impugning the integrity of those who did the report. The Ghana Registered Association has had cause to raise concerns about certain aspects of the report, specifically on the attack on the nurse. The GNRA has the freedom, has the latitude to ventilate its concern about alleged unfairness. But we also have have the freedom to also stick to what we believe. And my belief personally is that what is of paramount importance is the fixing of the problem which gave rise to what we all witness. This is in reference to tackling the issue from the root and not the branch. First of all, I've said it, and it's best repeating that journalists are not angels. Journalists are not whiter than white. Journalists are not purer than pure. Within our profession are people who are more corrupt than politicians. Within our profession are people who are more indisciplined than others. This is not to paint all journalists with the same accusing brush. On the flip side, we have quality men and women, people who are squeaky clean, people who have the moral standpoint, people who stand on a moral high ground to hold people to account, to expose dark spots in society, to unearth acts of corruption. You know, our job is not limited to parroting what people say or amplifying what politicians tell us or reproducing, press releases and all that. Our job is not only to educate, entertain, survey the social environment, but also to expose wrongdoing. And corruption is one. Corruption should be top on our radar, because of the calamitous effect of corruption on the economy, on our social well-being. Look at the number of schools which are begging for reshaping. Look at the number of schools which are begging to be fixed, to be constructed. Look at the infrastructure deficit in this country. Look at the rate of unemployment. Look at, even though we are doing well economically, we are picking up the pieces, but all this does not obscure the fact that the cost of living is bitingly bitter. So, and corruption, our inability to meet the basic needs of our people can partly be blamed on corruption. So the cancerous effect of corruption is felt in all sections of society. The acidic poverty experienced in large parts of this country can also be blamed on corruption, because people who are supposed to use state resources to make life better, worth living for the people, the underprivileged, decide to line their pockets, put up palatial homes or buy palatial homes and drive in swanky cars, while the majority of people live in squalor and poverty. So we need to tackle corruption with all intensity, with all ferocity and with all tenacity. And the media are well positioned to champion the fight against corruption. But first of all, they should ensure to cure the disease of corruption in their circles before they have the moral right to also point out corruption in larger society. Interestingly, if we take the work done by investigative journalists, but they're more effective in fighting corruption than the agencies mandated to fight corruption. That's just my take. I'm inclined to believe that. I'm entitled to my opinion. If you look at the effects of the expose done by Anas Arimia Anas, Manasseh Azuri Awini, the Fourth Estate, and others, but they've been so effective in fighting corruption, exposing real or perceived acts of corruption, exposing dark spots, exposing where the nation is bleeding profusely, all as a result of corruption. And we can help stanch, the media community can help stanch the blood flow when we train and deploy more investigative, incorruptible investigative journalists to expose and go after corrupt officials in both private and public circles. And first of all, let me state that you don't need any superfluity of evidence to point out that the media are polarized on partisan lines. We said that the media reflects society. So the Ghanaian media are a reflection of the degree of polarization in the Ghanaian society. But we, as journalists, we learn theoretically. It is ingrained in theory, but hardly rooted in practice, that objectivity is the purest gem of the profession. Objectivity is the purest gem of journalism. But how many journalists are objective? We learn in school that when you come across a story, when you have a story, you need to objectivize that story by embodying, including all sides, the principles of fairness, the principles of balance, the principles of comprehensiveness and all that. All sides. It said that every story has two or more sides. So when you have a story, all the various sides, people who are likely to be affected, or people who have a stake in that story ought to be consulted. But what do we do? Because of politics, we do a story and run with one-sided story. And one-sided story is nothing but one-sided journalism. And as the saying goes, one-sided journalism is irresponsible journalism. One-sided journalism is irresponsible journalism. So many journalists have earned the ignoble tag of irresponsible journalism by virtue of the fact that they always run with one-sided stories, which is bad. Some, like the larger society, will refract everything in partisan lenses. As I said, the media space is also so polarized. So, in this country, everything is refracted in other NDC or MPP lenses. And this is happening right in the media. No wonder we have sections in the media which are unashamedly NDC, others MPP, leaving a relatively few or small space for objective journalism. So we ought to address this issue. Our job is like referees, and a referee can have some affinity or can have some liking for Kotoko or Haas. But once you decide to be in the middle of the field, please, your affinity or affiliation with Haas or Kotoko should not show. You're like journalism. One decided to do the profession. Some votes, I know journalists vote wisely. Your voting pattern should not dictate how you should do your work. If you vote NDC, make sure that you don't toe the line of NDC. It should not even show in whatever you do, in your pronouncement, in your writings. If you vote MPP, the same principles should apply. Of course, this rule does not apply to pro NDC or pro MPP outlets. Theirs is propaganda journalism. So they see everything. And propaganda, by definition, is selective use of facts and not a perpetration of mendacity. So if you work with Radio Gold, there's nothing wrong with trumpeting the good side of NDC. If you work with Oman, yes, there's nothing wrong with criticizing the government, but all this should have some factual foundation. So whatever you put out there should have a substratum of facts, because journalism is not the perpetration of falsehood, but the dissemination of verifiable facts. So irrespective of where we work or the orientation of a media outlet, falsehood should have no space. Falsehood and journalism do not belong to the same sentence. This should always be lodged in the memory of all journalists. And to your question as to journalists who are now occupying political positions, we can cite the example of former Information Minister and Western House Minister Kojo Oppong-Nkrumah. Kojo Oppong-Nkrumah was a fantastic journalist. In fact, he was a gem of a journalist who I support media. Never did he neither did he betray any partisanship or any affinity for any political party. To the extent that Kojo Oppong-Nkrumah was chosen during the presidential vetting. He and the current vice president, at that time, His Excellency Nana Jepukwa did not or had not shown any political bias or partisan bias. You can take Shamima Muslim. Shamima was fantastic with CTFM. When Shamima was dazzling on air, Shamima did not show any inkling of NDC, any NDC inkling. But now she finds herself as the deputy presidential spokesperson. So, as I said, we vote, generally vote, but never should we allow our voting patterns to dictate how we do our work. I see nothing wrong, absolutely wrong. I see nothing absolutely wrong with journalists who abandon the pen profession and choose politics. But once you are doing journalism, please play the journalistic game according to the rules. And the rules contextually are fairness, objectivity, and what have you, truth, and what have you. And under no circumstances should these principles be sacrificed on the altar of political gain. Politicians are politicians, and politicians are addicted to goal scoring goals. As a result, the political scoreboard is littered with all kinds of goals. Some scored through fair means, some scored through foul means. Again, the political scoreboard is littered with all kinds of truth, untruth, blatant lies, and all that. But the karmic law applies. You reap what you sow. If you if you sow falsehood, inevitably you reap falsehood. If you sow untruth, the untruth will come against you. If you sow lies, blatant lies, those lies will hoot at you. And in this modern era of social media virality, social media does not forget. People will take your verbal misconduct or verbal indiscretion or verbal poison to come after you. Whilst trying to score political goals, as I said, it's within permissible limits. The law allows that. Make sure that you do this with the highest degree of circumspection, knowing the consequences, which may spell your political doom or chances in the long run. So those who think they can use ethnic bigotry, they can play the tribal card. Those who think they can pelt their opponents with the biggest verbal stones, remember that those stones will come back to hit you. So all politicians, please sell your message. I listened to the message of Canada Japan when he filed his, after filing his nominations. He anchored his message on jobs. You know the degree of joblessness in this country. It's a big issue. The storminess of hopelessness as a result of joblessness. So anyone who comes out to, package himself as a solver of that problem, it will give you some advantage. His Excellency Mohamed Bouamia also, touted what he achieved in his capacity as the vice president, what he intends doing when given a nod as a flag bearer and eventually as the president of the republic. Brian Champong also came out with his message. Edutum says he's going to digitize, going to modernize our education system and also tackle the issue of poverty in this country. And of poverty, especially in its acidic form, is a huge headache in this country. So whilst packaging a message and telling them, please do not hit below the belt, by employing ethnicity, employing all kinds of dirty games to weaken your opponent. Make sure you may weaken your opponent now, but tomorrow the weapons you use to weaken your opponent will come back and haunt you. Never weaponize your campaigns with swords, with ethnic bigotry, with other weapons, which will give you a bad name and also devalue your candidature in the future. I think it would be presumptuous on my part to make any declaration for any of the candidates. But at best I can analyze. But in terms of name recognition, His Excellency Dr. Mahamudu Bawumia has an advantage. He's been vice president. He was a candidate for 8 years and then became a vice president for 8 years. And so in terms of name recognition, in terms of familiarity with voters, in terms of popularity, he seems to have an advantage. And Canada, Japan is a grassroots person. He speaks the language of a grassroots. He identifies himself with the grassroots, and he has the temerity to speak truth to power. He will not side with anything which is wrong, any wrongdoing. He will not side with his party, even when they are on the wrong. Kennedy Japan will not. He will not whitewash what is bad. He will say things as they are. Even though human assets says he also has his drawbacks. So eventually it's the voters who will decide. But I'm inclined to believe that the generality of MPP voters, those who go to the primaries, will vote wisely and choose a candidate who has a better chance of getting them back to power. Journalism is a calling, and once you are called, make sure that you are addicted to the foundational principles, that you be married totally to the principles which underpin the profession, principles of truth, principles of fairness, principles of balance, principles of objectivity, which is the purest gem of the profession. In terms of rewards, some rewards have very long germination years. The rewards may not come rapidly, but eventually, if you do the work well, the rewards will manifest. So the mantra should be seek ye first quality journalism, and all others shall be added unto it. It's up to people who know me, who have tested my brand of journalism to decide. And as I said, it should be presumptuous on my part to prescribe how I will be remembered. But I'll say without any fear of contradiction, and I will say with a high sense of honesty that I did what I could do within the bounds of reality, humanity, humanness. I'm not perfect, but I haven't regretted choosing journalism over medicine. And if even in the next world, I will practice journalism. Thank you.